Okay, checking the right side of the engine here. We're going to check the covers here and make sure they're in good shape. None of these screws have backed out on us. All the safety wires are in place and they all look good. None of them are broken as we look around. We're going to check the spark plugs and the spark plug wires. What we're looking for here is to make sure they haven't pulled out, the condition is good, and they're secure in the spark plugs. Check all three going down here. One's in the front or under the shroud, so we're not going to be able to check those. And check the cylinder head temp probe here, and check the wire goes into the bundle here, and make sure that's in good shape. While we're back here, we want to check the intake manifolds, make sure there's no cracks, not leaking. The exhaust manifolds here, check those. Looks like this one's got a little bit of white chalky substance here. That means it's got a tiny leak in it, so we'll have to have that checked. If you look at the other ones down here, they're pretty clean and they're in good shape. There's no cracks in these. There's a little weld there. They're in good shape. And over here we have the correlator box. I'm going to check that, make sure there's no damage to the correlator box. Check the control rod that goes back, make sure that's in good shape here, and also make sure the security. We can do that by checking these castle nuts right here and the cotter keys. Make sure both ends have the cotter keys and the castle nuts. Okay, just one more quick note here. Manifold, intake manifold. If you did have a crack in here or you did have a leak, what you might see is an excessive manifold pressure reading up in the cockpit, and that's how you could tell you had a problem with that. Okay, starting with going down to the bottom of the engine, we're going to check down for any leaks down here. You got the oil pump back in here, and anytime you have a plug here, you want to make sure these electrical plugs are on tight. Okay, come over, we got the starter here. We're going to check the wiring on the starter, make sure there's no damage there, the wires are on good. And if we look right back in here, yeah, we got the tach generator back in here. There's another plug there. You want to make sure that that's on secure. The tach generator is exactly what it is. It's a generator, and if you happen to lose all electrical power up in the cockpit, that'll still give you the RPMs because it's a generator. It's producing its own power. All right, coming back over here, we're going to take a look here at the points. The magneto rather, and the points down here. Make sure all these light wires are secure, make sure all the screws are in. It says double points over here. One's a retard point starting, and then once it's going, it switches over to the normal points. Make sure those wires are all secure and there's no damage. Here we have an electrical box here, and can't really get inside of it, but you want to make sure there's no damage there. We do have a bunch of electrical components in there. We've got the reverse current relay, we got the voltage regulator, we have the starter relay, the external power relay. This helicopter does have an external power plug on it, and also a compressor which takes out the noise on the radio from the magnetos. Okay, continuing on, we're going to look at the front of the shroud and make sure it's buttoned up tight. There's no rips in the shroud here. We're going to look down below here, and we're going to look down at the general condition of the helicopter under here. You want to check anywhere that frame comes together, that there's no cracks. And there's some control cables down here that you want to make sure they're not fraying under here. And what I really want to point out in the front here also is the cyclic hydraulics. You want to make sure that that's not nothing's leaking there. And let me zoom in and point out something. You got two bolts to go right through there. These bolts, see if I can get without rocking the light, they need to rotate. You need to be able to turn these. Check the front one, the back one, and they turn. If they don't rotate, you need to get some spray and make sure they do rotate. Okay, continuing on, we're going to check the back cross tube here, make sure there's no damage to it. I don't know if you can see from this angle, there should be just a little smile right in there for suspension. We're going to check it, attachment points, check the bolts, make sure they're good, and make sure there's no cracks here where it attaches. While we're under here, we're going to check these control cables here. You want to make sure they're clean, make sure there's no frays in them. Good way is to take a nice soft rag and run a soft rag. If there's any fraying start, the rag will catch on that fray pretty easy. It's an easy way to find it. You won't get stuck in your finger. There's another safety cable. You want to check the security of the safety cable. Right here we have the air filter. There's nothing we really check except we want to make sure the plates on the front and this wing nut is tight and it's safety wired. Okay. Moving forward, we have the carburetor. Want to make sure there's no leaks around the carburetor, and all the safety wires are in place. None of them are broken. Come up a little higher, and we've got the cross tube here that goes between the two fuel tanks. They're gravity fed. Want to make sure there's no leaks in there. Right here we have what they call the short shaft right here, and there's a little bit of play if you move it back and forth. You want to make sure you don't bend that short shaft. Both sides of the short shaft, they have what they call dust boots right here, and one right up in the front. You want to make sure that there's no leaks in there. They have grease inside them, so you give them a little squeeze. They should be a little squishy. They shouldn't be real hard. If they're really hard, it's been over greased.